Hello everyone, today I'm super excited to share with you an art haul, and I know that art hauls are super popular on YouTube and I love them too because you get the opportunity to see all sorts of different supplies. And what's brilliant about this art haul is that I didn't actually pick the supplies that I'll be showing you. Canson Australia very kindly sent me an experimental art box. And I absolutely love this approach because I do find that I get into a rut and often choose the same brands, the same products, and I don't try out new things. And trying something new can be a really great way to boost your art practice, give you new ideas, and get you thinking outside the box. So with that said, I'm going to go through all the supplies that they've sent to me and also do some swatching and some little experiments so that you can see what I have in front of me and see if it's something that you would like to try out as well. So I wanted to start with the sketchbooks because then I can use one of these sketchbooks to swatch and test out some of these supplies. So what I have here is an Arches watercolour journal. So this one is familiar to me. This is one of the only products here that I actually do use already. I love Arches watercolour paper. It's 100% cotton. But what is different about this particular sketchbook is that it's a different size. So I've never worked in this landscape format. So it is 6 inches by 10 inches. It has a ring binder. It has a really nice grain to it, and this will be wonderful for watercolour work and combining watercolour with mixed media. And it's a really fun size. I can imagine using this for mark making and watercolour doodling and filling it up with those kind of simple and easy designs to get stuck into. So I'll put this one aside because this is a product that many of you will be familiar with, and then let's have a look at these other journals that they've sent through, which are absolutely huge. They're really big and chunky, and that excites me because it means that they have a lot of pages in there and that you can use it without feeling precious or worried about using up all your expensive paper. So I'm just going to move a few things out of the way so that I can start really spreading out the supplies and looking at them in more detail. So I have 2 sketchbooks here, or journals if you prefer, and they are both from Canson. One has watercolour paper in it and one has mixed media paper in it. So the watercolour paper one is going to have a little bit more of a grain to it, whereas the mixed media paper will be a bit smoother and good for using things like pens because it doesn't have quite as much rough texture to put your pen over the top of. Both of them have a really nice sturdy fabric cover, and it also has this handy little strap here to hold everything together. And the ring binder means that you can open it out and have a really nice flat surface to work on. So that's one of the advantages of a sketchbook that has a ring binder in it. I often do like to do spreads that go over 2 pages, but even so, I don't mind if there's a ring binder there. It's just all part of the experimental nature of a sketchbook, and I try not to worry too much about having a perfect spread. So I absolutely love the size of this sketchbook. This is probably one of my all-time favorite formats to work in. So a square size, and let me find the measurement. It is 20 centimeters by 20 centimeters, or roughly about 8 inch by 8 inch. It's also a heavyweight paper. So this is a 300 GSM weight of paper, which is quite heavy for a sketchbook. So you can do really washy work in there, and it's going to handle wet media beautifully. And as far as the color, you've got an ivory color to it. Just a nice texture, not too much. It just looks like it would be a really lovely sketchbook to work in, and you have the benefit of having so many pages. It is a mixture, so it's a cotton blend, so it's not 100% cotton, but it looks like it's a pretty high quality paper from the look of it. It's the Montfort. I just realised it is a brand that I have used before, and this is an excellent paper to use if you are just getting started with watercolour. It is super high quality, but it is more affordable than some of those premium papers. So a brilliant sketchbook. And then over here we have the mixed media, which is really similar. It's also a cotton blend. It's just going to have a slightly smoother paper. Let's have a look side by side. So yeah, it's only just slightly smoother than the watercolour paper. So this would be great for using with pens, pastels, collage, acrylic paint, watercolour, anything that you want to throw at it. And once again, huge sketchbook, so you can really have fun with it and not worry too much. So both of these look excellent. I'm going to pop them, this one here, aside now. And I think I'm going to hang out with this one today, so this little square one, and use it for some of the swatches that I'll be doing of the other products. So let's get into the paints. So they've sent me quite a few different types of paint, some inks, some watercolour and some heavy-bodied acrylics, so we can really have a look at the differences in those types of paint. So let's start with the watercolour, and this is a new brand to me. It's called Memory Blue. I'm not sure if that's exactly how you say it, but let's have a look inside. So you have quite big tubes here. So it's tube watercolour, made in Italy. You've got large tubes, and it's got the pigments on the side here. So let's have a look what we've got. So we've got green gold, Payne's grey, and this one, cadmium yellow deep, quinacridone lake, and what's this one? This looks like ultramarine deep. So they're all single pigments, they all have good light fast ratings, and you can see there's a mixture in this set. We have some opaque colours, so you can tell by the little square on the top here. We have an opaque colour with the cadmium. Then we've got the quinacridone, which is transparent. And most quinacridone paints are more transparent, while the cadmiums will be a bit more opaque. So these look like they will be really good quality because they are all single pigments. So there's no mixes there. And it's a nice range of colours as well. So I'm going to start with swatching these out. So they also sent me through some brushes. These are the Princeton Velvet Touch brushes. I haven't used these before, but I do absolutely love Princeton brushes in general, and I use the Princeton Neptune ones all the time. These look like they will also be really good for watercolour and acrylic ink. And the set itself comes with really handy brush sizes. So it has my favourites there, a round in a size 8, a round in a size 4. They are such versatile brush sizes, and then a flat brush and an angle brush. So it's a great little set. So I'm looking forward to trying them out. So I'm just squeezing the tiniest little bit out of each one. You can also just dip your brush in the top, which with these particular watercolours, they actually do have quite a big opening at the top there. So you could just dab your brush in there to get a bit of paint out so you don't squeeze too much out into the palette, especially when you are just swatching and you just want to test your colours out. Really beautiful and vibrant colour coming out, and it also reactivates with the water really easily, so it mixes up really well, which is nice. So this cadmium is really nice and opaque. So you can see the granulation coming through in the ultramarine straight away. It looks like it's going to dry really pretty. I'm already super impressed with these watercolours. The pigments are so vibrant and they lay down beautifully. Yeah, really loving them already. I'm not sure if they're really popular or not. As I said, I hadn't heard of them, but they certainly are lovely to paint with. You look at that beautiful lush quinacridone. Gorgeous. Oh, I really like that Payne's grey. It's got quite a bit of that blue in it, and I like Payne's greys that lean a bit more blue than grey. So there you can see the colours that they sent me, and because they have sent me primary colours, you can then go ahead and mix all sorts of other colours just from this set. And it's really handy to have a Payne's grey as well, because it's a great colour for neutralising other colours if you want to. So all in all, this is a great set. It's definitely something that I would look into if you wanted to get started with watercolour and have a really high quality watercolour paint. You would have a lot of fun with these, and you can see granulation coming through beautifully on the Payne's grey as well, whereas the cadmium yellow is much smoother. Yeah, really, really lovely set. I'm going to save this paint here so I can have a bit more of a play with it later, but let's move on to some other supplies. So now I'm going to use the mixed media book to test out some of the heavier bodied acrylic paint. So I have the System 3 acrylic. Let me bring it over. And again, this is a brand that I haven't used before. So this is the Daler Rowney System 3. This is a student grade paint, but I have heard that it is a very good quality for a student grade and it's budget friendly. It'd be brilliant for mixed media sketchbook work and those sorts of things. So let's take them out, have a look at the colours and see what kind of pigments and coverage we can get. So this is a basic mixing set. So you've got your primary colours, you've got black, white and burnt sienna. So that's a really handy colour to have to be able to mix in and neutralise, similar to the Payne's grey. I really love having an earth pigment or two in my palette. It's just a handy way to bring in some more sort of earthy colours into your paint palette so that everything isn't super bright. So I am going to now just have a look at how these compare to another set of colours that I have. So I have got some Atelier Interactive here. So this is an Australian brand and this is an artist grade paint. So I'm just curious to see how the student grade holds up. I'm not expecting it to be as vibrant as an artist grade paint because they are in a different category, but it will just give me a bit of an idea. So this is cadmium yellow hue, and so it is made with a mixture of pigments. So if a paint colour has the word hue in it, it just means that it looks like that colour. So it looks like cadmium yellow, but it's not necessarily made of cadmium yellow. You can actually see it's made of two different pigments. So these paints aren't pure pigment paints. So that's one thing to notice. I'll have a look at the other ones when I squeeze them out and see. So this is a naphthol red, that's the pigment used. It is a single pigment. And this is ultramarine. So it's just the yellow that is two pigments mixed together. Okay, so you can see from me squeezing just a small amount out how much body they have in them. So they are standing up, they've got a good sort of consistency to them so that you can get some nice textures if you want to in your art. So it's a heavier bodied paint. So it's got a nice buttery consistency to it. I can just paint some out here. So let's just have a look. I have this colour. This is going to be a little bit of a different colour. This is cadmium yellow light, so it's going to look a little bit more lemony. So they both have really good coverage. The Atelier Interactive just goes down a little bit smoother off the brush, which is what you would expect with an artist grade quality of paint, but there's not a lot in it. You could definitely enjoy using the System 3. Let's try the other colours now. And sometimes I will use a student grade paint in the early layers of a large painting, and then I might save my more premium paints for the final layers. So you can add a little bit of water to the paint just to soften it a bit. And we'll be able to get a good indication of the coverage here with the red, because quite often red can be a little bit difficult to get that good coverage. But this is quite an opaque colour. You can see it's going down really nice and bright and thick. Let's just rub a bit of this off. So paper towel is another thing that's really handy to have close by if you are testing colours, so that you can get the excess off your brush before dipping it in the water. So this cadmium red from Atelier Interactive is a bit of a deeper red, so it is a darker colour. Both of them have got great coverage, so they have that opacity. The Atelier Interactive does just go down that little bit easier, but you really wouldn't notice it too much. Super impressed though with the vibrancy of the colour in the System 3, and we'll just check on the blue one now. So you can see that the colours are really bright. The System 3 is just a little bit thicker, which means it would be well suited to impasto work. So if you are using a palette knife or you have some textural tools, the thickness of the paint is going to be wonderful for that. The Atelier Interactive, it is just a little bit softer. It glides on a little easier, so it's a different kind of formula, but both of them are great. And I'm really quite impressed with how much coverage and how much vibrancy there is in the System 3 range. So let's take a look at the different inks that I have here. So I have the System 3 acrylic ink, and I also have the Aquafine watercolour ink. So these are both by Daler Rowney. Two different types of ink. One is a pigment-based water-soluble ink, this one here, and this here is an acrylic ink that is permanent once dry and also very opaque. So the colours in the System 3 range are more opaque than the colours in the Daler Rowney FW acrylic inks, which are the ones that I usually use. So let's just take a look at that. So I'm going to start off by just getting these down quite quickly, just write a little note for myself. So for these I am going to just pop a little drop onto the page and smush it around with the brush just to get a feel for the consistency of the paint. I might just do that one again because I do have a little bit of dirty paint water. I want to see what it looks like without that mixed in. Let me just grab this clean water, give this brush a better clean. It's just a lovely red. It's just a slight pinky tinge to it. It's really lovely. So this is a silver, and you can just see how opaque that is. That would be a fun one to use with a little fine brush for some details in a painting. And this is the Mars Black. So I won't worry about the white because you won't see it on the page there, but it's good to have the white for mixing into other colours. Let's have a look at the Aquafine watercolour inks. So you can see if we add water to these, we can get those really nice light washy effects. And you can see how easily they thin out. I really like the idea of these because I often use big puddles of watercolour paint in my paintings, and it can take a bit of time to mix up a large well of colour with watercolour paint. And this enables you to get a large washy area quickly down on the page. So if you are painting a background or something like that, you can just add this so easily using the dropper rather than having to mix up paint from a watercolour palette or a watercolour tube. So I really like the idea of these, using them in backgrounds. I think that would be really fun. I've always wanted to try a form of watercolour paint that is liquid, so it comes in a liquid form, and I've not actually done that. So this is really interesting to me, and I feel like it would work quite well with the way that I paint. I think my swatches are getting progressively messier. I started off with squares and circles, and now we're just got splodges going on. Good idea to give the colours quite a good shake when you use them. Just be careful when you're doing that, but just to make sure they've really mixed up and they're not separating out. So you can see that these are more watercolour-like. They do sort of sit on top of the paper a bit rather than sinking in quite as much as watercolour paints do. These ones here are starting to dry, and you can see how opaque the colours are. So yeah, there's some good options there. It's good to have different supplies that you can combine together to get different effects. So if you wanted to get more of a watercolour look, you could go for these aquafine inks. Whereas if you wanted some really bold colour, more of a gouache-like effect, like blocky colour, then these are great because they are more opaque. So an interesting combination there of different types of paints. And also these beautiful watercolours, which I really like. Definitely something I want to look more into. So that's all the paints. Let's have a look at what else there is to show you here. So I've also got this really exciting set of watercolour pastels. So these are water soluble, and they look a little bit like Neocolor 2 pastels, which I use all the time. So I'm interested to have a look at these. Let me just make some room. So look at these, oh, so many yummy colours. I often buy pastels or crayons individually, and I don't tend to buy a big set like this. But lately I've been really wanting to push my work in different colour directions, and I'm trying to get out of the habits of always buying the same colours or always mixing the same colours. And so a set like this can be great because it will jumpstart you into using something that you wouldn't usually use. So for me that might be like a really bright yellow or red or orange, because I usually will use more earthy colours. Blues, pinks, greens is where my colour palette generally lies, not so much in the bright yellows or reds or even really vibrant greens. So it's good to have different options, and it's a great way to explore colour. So I might just grab this book again and see if I can find some room just to do a few little swatches. I'm dripping everywhere. Kind of like the drippy effects though. Let me just grab a bit of paper. I might have added a bit too much water to those watercolour inks. They're just a different kind of consistency to the acrylic inks, so that takes a bit of getting used to. So let me just take a look at some of these colours. So with these you can use them dry, or you can add water to them as well. So I'm going to just pick out a few colours. They have a bit of a firmness to them, which is quite nice if you want to do drawing and sketching with them. Oh, I really like this purple. This is a, what is it? Magenta. Okay, so let's just have a little look at how they activate with water as well. I'll just pull a bit of the colour out. So they reactivate easily, so that's good. So they mix easily when you add water to them, and they are already drying and giving a really nice watercolour type effect once you add water. So they look quite comparable to the Neocolour too. So if you are looking for a product like this, which is really versatile, I personally love using this type of product when I start a sketchbook page. I love to just get marks down and allow those marks to then intermingle with other supplies. I also sometimes add details over the top and use them dry. So if that's a supply that you are interested in, definitely check out the Lyra, because they will be good fun and you can use them in a multitude of ways. So another thing that came in the box are these pens, these paint markers that you can actually put paint into them and then use it as a pen. So it has a pen type nib on the end. So I thought I would give that a try. I might add the silver into one of them because I think that would be a handy one to have. Let's figure out how to do this. Like that. Okay, so I've just added a little bit in there and given it a few pumps on the page just to get it to come out. But you can already see that even just with that little bit of ink that I added, that the paint is coming out. So this is really fun because you can customize your paint pens and put whatever color you want. You can even mix colors and get whatever kind of color that you are craving rather than being restricted to the colors that are available in something like a Posca paint pen. So I'm really liking that. Let's just see how they flow. So you could definitely write with them if you wanted to, draw shapes with them, come over the top of something like the acrylic paint that we have here. You can just do some mark making or pattern play over the top. So it just works like an acrylic marker, but it's using the ink. So that's really versatile because you could use the watercolour ink as well. So you could have a watercolour ink pen. So it quickly comes to the nib, so that's good. It doesn't take much at all to get the paint to start coming out. So this would be great for details because you could get right in there with the fine end of the nib. It's quite a different feeling to using a brush. Different it looks once you add water. It just looks like an acrylic paint pen when you use it straight out of the pen because it's in a very saturated form rather than the more watery form that you get when you add more water into it and use it as a paint. So I think that pretty much covers everything that they sent me. Lots of fun things to play with and layer with, and it's great to have different paints for different purposes and to know when you would want to use an acrylic heavier bodied paint versus an ink or a watercolour. So I really hope that you've enjoyed this video and that it's inspired you to look at some other supplies perhaps that you don't usually reach for. And I just want to say a huge thank you to Canson Australia for sending me out all of these goodies to try and for opening me up to some new and different products that I can add into my toolkit.